All right, I'm going to go over this and let you know what I did. And then I've got a version 2. You're not going to work on it today, but I'm going to give you some time to work on it tomorrow. I wrote this in a very un-Java-like way. What I mean is, I don't have a constructor. I don't have get and set methods. I wrote this more like we wrote the C# programs that we did last semester. So for version 2, I'm going to ask you to Java this up. All right, I'll explain what I mean by that in just a couple minutes. So I wrote the calculator. Those were my inputs. Those were my outputs. And when I thought about it later, I had 4 different variables for my outputs. Okay, I had sum. I called it diff, prod, and quote. You know, for the sum, the difference, the product, and the quotient. But it would have been probably much easier if I would have just had one variable and called it result. And I'll explain why if you don't understand that in just a minute. I wrote separate methods for each input and each output. I had main be a driver, and it allowed you to run the program over and over again. I did not allow to divide by 0. I did not allow the user to enter negative numbers as input. All right. This is where I broke protocol a little bit. And it's because of the way that I set it up. I just literally set it up so that everything displayed to 1 decimal place. All right, which broke the rule there, but basically everything else worked the way that I told you that it would. All right, this will be version 2 that we'll talk about in just a couple of minutes. So let's look at it from the top. All right. First thing is, I made it a little bit GUI. All right, I used the J option pane with the show input dialog and the show message box dialog. Now, if you look up on the screen here, I'm going to run it for you because it might look a little weird. First thing I ask is, what do you want to do with the numbers? I don't ask for the numbers first. And the reason for that is I set it up as a very simple little menu, and I don't even have it here, but I guess I left it off. 0 ends the program. So if I put in a 0, it just ends. All right. In fact, I should have added that. So if you want to add that to what I gave you, you can. But this really should have said here, this should have said enter a 0 to exit the program. That really, that would have been better. All right, so let me put that in. Let me do a file, save all, and run it again. And you'll notice now it says enter a 0 to exit the program now. All right, so if I do enter a 0, it exits. Okay, that's the last time I'll run the 0 for a while. So enter a 1, so I want to add the numbers together. There's a 1, then I ask to enter the numbers. All right, did I have to do it that way? No. But in fact, I put that in there later. I changed it around. But otherwise, I was asking you for 2 numbers. And then if you entered a 0, it ended the program. So why did I ask you for 2 numbers? All right, so I don't know. So the ones I used in the example were 37 and 10. Okay, so I put a 1 in there. 37 plus 10 is 47. 37 minus 10 is 27. 37 times 10 is 370. 37 divided by 10 is 3.7. You'll notice if I put in something that's out of range, like a 6, it just says inputs out of range. All right, and actually now that I look at that, I should have this, well, let's just put it here, 3, 3, 3, okay, 0. This should have also, well, I do have it in there. So I've got, so if I put in a bad number, okay, what did I do? I didn't ask you to do it again. See that? I should have put this anytime where you're eliciting user input, where the user can conceivably screw up, really should be in a while loop. So I should take all that code that you see in blue and put a while loop underneath it and force you to put in a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. because right now it's not exactly running the way I want it to. It's close, and I guess it's up here, but it could be better. All right.
You do have that, which has the
Yeah, it's
message room.
right. Okay, now, if you didn't know this, while 1 equal 1, as far as I know, 1 will always equal 1. All right? There's a lot of ways that you can write this, but I was trying to put it into an infinite loop. Okay? When you look here, I set up, I didn't tell you to do this, but I said, you know what? If I say 1,000 times 1,000, that's like 1,000,000, right? And I figured that was plenty big. So I just made my own constants for min and max. You didn't have to do that. But if you put in a number that was so huge, you'd break the program. And I didn't want to break the program. So that's why I left it like that. And I left this at 0. And the reason I left that at 0 was so that I could make a check in my code to say that if you entered a 0 for the second number, don't take it. You understand what I'm saying? All right, that's why I put it in there like that. So in main, I created these variables. I purposely put these variables in main so they'd have to be passed around. Remember, if I'd have taken all of these variables right here that you see in blue, if I'd put them all up here, all right, if I had done that, then they would have become, right now, they're local variables. All right, but if I would have put them up there, they would have become instance variables and I wouldn't have to pass them. I wanted to pass them. All right. So I said make a selection, and then that make a selection, I don't know where, there it is. There's where I say it, yeah. Enter a 1, 2, 3, or 4, you're right. So yeah, this could definitely be fixed. How's that? It could be made to run better. If I get a chance tomorrow while you're doing the other part, I'll fix that up. All right. So the idea was you will return a 1, 2, 3, or 4 by the time you get down to the end here. Does that make sense? That was the idea. All right. So you've got a 1, 2, 3, or 4 in here. If it's a 0, you just get out. I haven't shown you that before, so I wouldn't have expected you to know it. System.exit with the 0 in there, that exits the program. And 0 is considered a normal type of exit. So that's what that is. All right. Then number 1 equal input number. When I first wrote this, I wrote 2 different routines. What is the sense of writing 2 different routines? There was none that I could see. You were inputting 2 numbers, but both numbers were supposed to be between 0 and 1,000. So to have one program, or to have one method called input number 1 and have another one called input number 2 and have those be the same method, except for the names, is silly to do that. You should never do something like that. All right? So then I switched on the selection here. All right? If it was a 0, for some, I should have caught it earlier, but just in case, I get you out. If it's a 1, I do the sum and then print the results. If it's a 2, the difference, and print the results. If it's a 3, a product, and print the results. If it's a 4, that and print the results. This should never happen. But just in case it does, I just gave a message that said illegal input, and I just did a break. I didn't return anything. All right. Here's my input number function. All right. Just told you to input a number. And then I put it in. Remember, it goes in as a string, so I parsed it. If it was less than 0 or greater than 1,000, I had you do it again. And eventually I returned that number. We already went through the make a selection thing. These are real simple. Add 2 numbers, return number 1 plus number 2, subtract, return number 1 minus number 2, product, return number 1 times number 2. This one had a little more work. Notice that if I ran this, and I didn't, but if I ran it and I put 37 in for the first number and 0 in for the second number, technically the answer to that is infinity. Anything you divide by 0 is infinity. But what I said was if the second number is 0, just put illegal input returning 0 for result, and that's what I did. So it said 37 divided by 0 is 0. Now you could argue and say, well, that's not a real calculator then. No, but it's, you understand at least what I'm trying to do here. A real calculator wouldn't give you messages like that either.
Just say undefined.
What's that?
Could just say undefined.
Yeah. Question mark, whatever. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff we could have done there. All right, and do you remember this? Look up on the screen here. Do you remember what that is? That's called casting. I am dividing an integer by an integer. If I didn't do that, I have to cast one or both of them. I didn't have to cast both, but I have to cast at least one. If I just return n1 by n2, 37 divided by 10, integer divided by integer gives you 3. That's the wrong answer. It's not 3.7. So that's why I did a cast right there. All right, then I printed the result, and I decided, to do another switch in here where I could add a plus sign or a minus sign or a multiply or a divide, and if it was somehow this should never get hit again, but the default I made a plus sign. And then I printed it all out. It's not really a very long program. All right, 175 or 100, almost 180 lines. Probably about 10% of that are comments or blank lines. So probably about 160 lines. It's not really a big program. All right, I'll clean it up and give you a cleaned up copy as soon as I get it cleaned up. Now, what I'd like you to do, you can start it now. All right, but now I want you to Java this. And what I mean is this, and again, I'm going to give you this in a handout. So again, I said Java up this simple calculator. That's what you're doing. Notice you still have 2 inputs, number 1 and number 2. Technically, you'll have 3 inputs. You'll also have a selection, which will be a 1 to add, a 2 to 2 to subtract, 3 for multiply, and a 4 for divide. All right, just the same way that we did it before. But now, what you're going to do is main should have a for loop in it. And it should basically create 25 instances of this. You say, I don't know what you mean, then go back and take a look at some of the earlier programs. I'm purposely not giving you a lot of help here. I want you to do some investigatory work on your own. All right? So we will look at this one. I'm going to clean up the first one, but we will look at this one tomorrow. All right? That's how we'll start the period tomorrow. And again, Tiffany, I think, is the only one who missed today. So what I'll do is I'll send her a copy of Part 1, the specs, and Part 2, the specs, so that she has those. All right? So again, when we start tomorrow, we'll spend the first half hour plus however long it takes going over this second version of the calculator. And I'm going to even put some stuff in there that we haven't talked about yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put exception handling into the program so that you can see how Java handles exceptions. All right, so if I try to divide by 0, what's going to happen?